Typical service at Hardings Swift Caravans. The caravans used to look like in the 70s and the 80s. They were a 16-foot caravan, which were fairly basic, and used to probably go to Rosebud once a year, or they did some fairly low miles. Now a caravan is almost commonly got a shower and toilet. It's a much bigger unit, so it's much heavier, and we find a lot of customers are doing 10,000 k's a year, so the servicing has probably become more frequent. In terms of when you do service a caravan, we'd say every 2 to 3 years, or around about 10,000 k's. So for some people it might be based on 3 years, some people it might be every year. Every service is done on a hoist, and for us we see that with the weight and the miles that caravans are doing, that's highly important. It's gone are the days where you can service a caravan on a set of jack stands on the floor. So these vans are tracted onto a hoist. We start a typical service. I'll just sort of go through not everything in detail, but a typical service at Hardings, we're looking at all the welds around this area here fairly critically. We're looking at the coupling bolts and making sure that the coupling is operating sufficiently, that catch is working properly. We then go down to the back of the A-frame, where again looking for welds and they're making sure there's no cracks in those critical areas. And a lot of the staff that we've got working here have been working here for a number of years, so they know where to look. I suppose the next big part of the service is we take the wheels off, we take the brake drums off. What we're doing is degreasing the bearings down. We're looking at the magnets and the linings. Typically you get a lot of wear out of your linings, but we do get a lot of heat cracking in linings, so that's where we might change those. A brake magnet will typically last 40 to 50,000 k's, and again we're looking at the type of brake control you got in your car to make sure that if we're seeing magnets that are worn in 20,000 k's, we'll be wanting to know what sort of controller you got in your car and whether that's whether you're getting the right wear out of those magnets. The other critical thing we're looking at on caravans is the suspension. Leaf spring suspensions, we've got to monitor those more closely. They're an old-fashioned system. Independent suspensions are becoming more commonplace in caravans. Jayco just released the J-Tech suspension. They are a more reliable suspension, however they do need toe-in adjustments looked at probably every 10-20,000. Again, we're looking for chassis cracks. We're making sure that the jacks are operating properly. We're making sure that the plumbing underneath hasn't been knocked by a stone, or water tank mount hasn't popped off. We're checking the wiring. We're looking at the dates on the tyres to make sure that the tyres, two things on the tyres we're probably critically looking at is the wear pattern. Make sure we haven't got a bent axle or an independent suspension that's out of alignment. The other thing is the tyre date. If your tyres are older than 6 years, we would recommend they be changed because they've got a risk of blowing out. On a lot of bigger vans too, we've got a breakaway switch, and it's very important that we make sure that that works. So in the event that your caravan broke away from the car, the idea of that device is it's got to have a battery on board the van to activate those caravan brakes in the case of an emergency. So in summary, that's probably a typical service on a caravan. There's a number of other areas that we delve into. Probably last one to touch on, which might be a little bit hard to see. Some manufacturers do a great job in this instance of making sure those electric brake wires are sufficiently protected under the van. Others probably could do a better job of protecting those wires because they're a fairly critical section of wiring that operates your caravan brakes.